Gary Jones with another episode of For Success. So I have been trying to get this meeting done for a few weeks. Brother Pennell, Derek Pennell, just excited to have you here today to talk about who you are, what you do. And honestly, I don't even remember, when we met. It's been some time. One of my friends, Corey Coker, said he introduced us, which potentially could have been the case. But I remember when we met, I believe I was coming in the Blue, the first location, having food here in Jazz. And I come to find out that you know Jazz, you played Jazz. But then I find out you're a developer, you're a community advocate. You just have so many different things. And then I went to, multiple locations that you have going on. And, I meet a bunch of people in my industry, but I can't say I'm always impressed. But when I tell you I was impressed, and I think it's how you carry yourself, but it's also the impact that you're having on our community. And so the reason why I wanted to just kind of start this conversation about who you are, right? And then what you do. And I feel like they're synonymous. Mm-hmm. But I found out you're a lawyer, so you're a jazz player, you're a business owner, right? A father, right? A husband.
Yeah. Now you get into the core. That's who I am, right?
Yeah. But I think, and when I say impressed, it's just that, we have a lot of people doing things in our community, but not many people impacting. And then we have a lot of people with voices, right? But nothing to say. And so I felt like what I wanted to have a conversation today was about leadership, right? Was about who you are as a person, some of the things that you're doing, because sometimes it makes things more believable when they can see the impact of what's coming. But I feel like, having this conversation today was important for me.
Right.
Because I'm the type of person, if I'm in a room with somebody that I admire or that's doing something, I'm going to introduce you. Hey, don't walk past this one.
Yeah.
I'm going to need y'all to have a conversation. Because sometimes we're both trying to do things and we don't talk enough. And especially in our community, right? As Black men, as fathers, as people that's doing things, sometimes it looks like competition. And so out of all the things that I've heard you're doing, I've never felt anything but growth and always been blown away when I walk in a room. Like, this was what? This was a warehouse? And now,
vision.
Yes. So can you just give a little story about who you are, how you got started?
Wow. First of all, man, I appreciate you having me. Sometimes we get so busy working that we don't realize the impact.
Yes.
And when people reach out and say, hey, man, I like for you to, talk to the people.
Yeah.
Have a conversation, let them know who you are, what you do. Then the light comes on and like, wow, you know what? Okay, I am doing something. And I've always been purpose driven. You know what I mean? Not just out here. What I say, there's a difference between busyness and business.
Yeah.
I don't want to just be busy. I want to have some achieved goals. And so thank you.
Yes.
First of all, let me just say thank you for that, for this opportunity. Just me, man. I remember that little Schoolhouse Rock where the guy you say, I'm just a plain old Bill sitting here on Capitol Hill. Like, I always come to that, man, because it's never been about me. You know what I mean? I just, I'm this kid that was raised by a single mom at first. Then my pops came along, right, and made all the world difference. But I remember being in the projects, me, my mom, my brother. And for me, it was, I think I've always, as far back as I can remember, just wanted to be different. And what I mean by that, I used to say probably when I was maybe 10 or 11, when I really understood stigmas and stereotypes, I used to tell my mom, like, Mom, I want on my tombstone it to say stereotype breaker. Just, you know what I mean? So everything that they said we're supposed to be negatively, I wasn't going to be. Everything they said, we couldn't achieve, I wanted to achieve. So I just kind of set out without even saying it. Like, I'm just going to prove that we're great and disprove that we're not, ungreat, right? And so even in my journeys in school, I just remember thinking, I'm going to show them that, Black males can, achieve academically. So I just had in my mind, I was never going around saying, man, I'm showing everybody I'm going to be in the top of the class. I just was like, let me just do it.
But you were.
I was. I was.
And that's where the JD came.
From elementary through law school, I was at the top, right?
Wow.
But it was always, but I always shared my knowledge. I'm helping folks, get on honor roll with me. You know what I mean? It was never just about me. Again, like I think I used to take my test like outstretched like this, so my people next to me can kind of see,
right?
And I can help them get some answers that they didn't remember.
Right.
We'll go with the remember part, right? But it was never covered up, and but for me it was because I wanted to see the people around me successful, and I also felt like my success was not just a model, but just also letting folks know it's possible, so if they see, man, this black guy's going up here on super honor roll, I can too. It's achievable. Every black male can't be just sent to the office getting suspended. So for me, just like I said, coming up from the projects, just like, man, I'm not going to just be out here stabbing everybody like I see.
Right.
Because I seen it, witnessed someone die right in front of me, got shot right in front of me, close friend of mine. I held him till he died. And when you experience those types of things, man, you got decisions. You're like, man, do I retaliate or do I just, make the world a better place? So for me, I was like, stay the course, Derek, stay the course. You still got to break the stereotypes. So for me, I was just like, I'm going to go ahead and graduate. I was an athlete coming out of East High School, scholarship to Villanova, just, I was an athlete, but I was a smart athlete too, what I mean? So, and you still are a product of your environment as much as we don't like to think about it. So I would, leave, worked. I started working full time at 14, 16, I got a job at Kroger's. I was working full time. So I would leave school, play ball, leave practice, go work at Kroger from 5:30 to 1:30 a.m., cause folks wasn't buying Nikes. They was just like, we got gas, we got electric, and we got the roof over your head. And everything else on you,
right?
And so, got a full-time job right at 16. And so for me, it was just, I would leave work, go home, get high, drink, but I started, and I'm gonna keep it real with you though, because that's the life. I started drinking and smoking in middle school.
Wow.
Right. And because that's just what I was around. But it dawned on me that my biological father, who left when I was 2, who I've never seen since, was an alcoholic. But it hit me like, it's in your genes, bruh. You're getting ready to go down the wrong path. And folks who know me know I'm an extremist. I'm gonna go all in. Yeah. I'm gonna go all out. I was gonna be alcoholic, or I was gonna be cold turkey, no more alcohol.
Right.
And I chose the latter. So my senior year, I remember thinking, man, I'm never gonna drink again. And haven't.
Wow.
And that's tough when you get ready to head off to college.
Oh no,
everybody's drinking, and they're like, and I'm like, no, I'm cool. But that was the leadership in me too. Like, no, I'm cool, because peer pressure was never a problem for me. Yeah. You know what I mean? So when they was like, hey man, we all about to drink. What you want, Pernell? Milk? 7-Up? I was like, bro, let me get 2 milks and a 7-Up. You know what I mean? Because y'all wasn't going to sway me, because I knew, why I was doing what I was doing. And I think that was important for me. And so, plus I saw what it did. Yeah. I saw, firsthand, the biological getting drunk and beating my mother, you know what I mean? And for me, it had an impact on my life, because I remember even through adulthood just having recurring nightmares of like, why? But I didn't see him beating her in my dreams. I saw me standing in the doorway crying because I couldn't help her. And I was like, nah, I'm not going to allow alcohol to enter into my life, And so, so that was important for me, and and it just helped through the journey. So, I went on high school, was a class clown, but a 4.0 student. So I said, I don't know how many people get voted class clown and most likely to succeed. Usually those 2 votes aren't the same person. Different. You know what I mean? This person got it and this person got it. But it says something about me and my character, you know what I mean? Because I was always going to be real. Yeah. So I was going to clown with my people, but I was going to hit them grades still, because I was on a mission to, show folks that, Black folks are worthy of all the credit that we do get, and deserve it. So, went to Ohio State on a full academic scholarship. Because, the basketball scholarship was Villanova, but I broke my ankle my senior year. and had a plate and 7 pins put in for life.
Oh,
So,
wow.
that just kind of, but,
Right.
but it was cool. God had other plans. So I went to Ohio State and, was there about a year. And I kind of watched how their Office of Minority Affairs brought all these black folks in. Then I watched them all failing and having to leave. And so now that's where my love for my people kicked in, right? So I called them on it. I said, listen, you guys get money based on enrollment, not graduation. So you're just caring about getting us in here. But once we get here, the care stops.
Right.
So I said, now I don't watch 3 of my roommates that look like me. One went back to Detroit. One went back to Cincinnati. And the other one was here. It just all gone. Right. And it was all academic scholarships, which means mentally they had it.
Yeah.
But they just needed some help adjusting to the Ohio State University. Right.
For sure.
And they couldn't make that adjustment. And so for me, I was like, I don't like what y'all doing, so I'm going to leave. My advisor was like, Derek, you going to forfeit your scholarship over this? I said, for my people, yeah, because it's a statement. So I left. I left O State, and I said, man, I'm just going to work. And I remember hearing my parents behind closed doors. They know I heard them. They was like, man, where did we go wrong with him? I'm like, dang, nah, they ain't proud of me no more, right? Like, where's that pride? They used to be like, you are star child, right?
Exactly.
Even though they would never say that, Shout out to my brother and my sister, And, but, after a while, that purpose kicked back in. I'm like, okay, Derek, you're not going to do anybody any good just working for someone else. And I was always an entrepreneur. So I enrolled in Columbus State, double majored, transferred to Franklin, triple majored, went to Capital Law, and then transferred to University of West LA because I wanted to go into entertainment law. So let's go to LA. So I went out there and then came back, went to Franklin's MBA program. So for me, I was an academician, right? Big word for nerd, but I was a nerd in the hood, so I had the best of both worlds. So even now, I still shoot ball with the same cats that, will cut you.
Yeah.
They don't shoot. My generation doesn't shoot, bro. They just cut. They cut. But I can also sit in the boardroom with, some pretty, wealthy folks and acclimate, fairly well. I'm definitely blessed, I'm going to say that. And so now I journey into my adulthood, which is, I'm married, man, and 28 years, I just rounded 30, man, because it's been a journey. Listen, as soon as I hit 31, I'm going to start telling people I've been married almost 40 years, man.
Right.
I'm always round up. Shout out to my wife.
Yeah.
And then I got 2 wonderful sons, man. I call them my pride and joy. And Derek and Daniel are amazing entrepreneurs, man, but more importantly, they're amazing men, and so super proud of them, man. And they just kind of, I've always wanted to just be an example. I wanted them to say, okay, listen, this is what sticking to it looks like. Because we don't normally see that. Yeah. Again, that's that stereotype breaker. Like, it's easy to walk away and say, man, enough is enough. Now, I'm not a proponent of anybody being abused, so men and women. Right. You got to be happy, so I just know that I just wanted to be there for them every single day until they were grown, and now they're grown. Right. Now, I ain't going nowhere, Tiff, I ain't going nowhere. Right. But, it meant a lot to me to just be there. And then, as an entrepreneur, you can say, I like to talk, bro. I can go. You just say, tell me about your life. I'm just saying chronologically, because I always think about, even when I do the grand opening for COED, the Center for Entrepreneur Development, I always think it's going to be like a monologue, where people just sitting in one little chair with one little light like this with a cigarette, telling your story. Even though I don't smoke, y'all, but telling the story like, this is me. Right.
But I think that just that intro said a lot about you, from having a scholarship, walking away, or scholarship at Villanova basketball, moving on to Ohio State, walking away, and then going and double and triple and majoring, and then going into entertainment law, and being a family man. I think those are important, valuable things to understand before we get to the co-ed portion of things. Right. Which, when I first walked in co-ed, probably everybody will have a story about it, right? And I can't remember, it was a few years ago. And I'm walking through and I'm like, okay, this is an interesting building. I done passed by this my whole life. It's nothing interesting about it at all, I would have continued to pass by
Right.
it.
Right.
But then I walked in and there's, things on the wall talking about, just inspiring quotes,
Right. Right.
inspiring people. And then you see people that you always see in the community that are buying in and have spaces there. And then every time I came, I seen a new part of it being built out. And so when you're in business, you always hear people doing things, talking about things. Like, yeah, I'm about to do this. It's like, yeah, I'm sure you are. Not saying it a bad way, but you may never see it or it never happens.
Right. Right.
So I walked in and maybe 2 weeks later, I'm coming back and it's a whole wing built out. I'm like, this was not here last week. Like, well, you're not working. I'm like, nah, this is different. So I come back again, I go upstairs and I see, again, like the building is developing and there's a center for you to go and, to do conferences if you want. There's a gym in there, right? There's multiple people on multiple levels, from tax advisors to nail people to, you have so many entrepreneurs that sometimes it's hard for us as entrepreneurs to find a place to just have a space to communicate with your client, to grow your business.
Right. Right.
And so what you've created is it's inspiring from the aesthetics, but it's also inspiring from the inside community of like what people are starting to do with each other. And I think that's where we lacked. And that's a lot of the reason why I thought it was special, because a lot of people own buildings, right? But not many people can build communities and develop along the way.
Yeah.
So tell me where this idea of where co-ed came from, and then where you see it now and where is it going?
Right. Right. Wow. So, co-ed, for those who don't know, is the Center of Entrepreneurial Development. Entrepreneurship is what brought me out of the projects, unequivocally. School was great, but I know when you start cutting grass at 14, and Derek's grass cutting service, and by 19 it was Pinnell's Landscaping and Lawn Maintenance Company, probably had 18 staff and was netting six figures. So that was before college. You know what I mean? So I knew God created me to be an entrepreneur. That was my purpose, And so but along the way, I think maybe 5 years in, once I realized I'm good at this, I start saying, man, I got to share this with other folks. Our people got to understand what entrepreneurship is and why it's important to sustain us as a culture. And so I started helping folks. Like, what type of business you got? I mean, I'm not the end all be all, but I have a formula that works, which is hard work and reinvesting back into the business, and don't get that first check and cash out and buy shoes and car but build the business, and then it'll be worth it in the end. So I just shared that knowledge, man. And I like to say, I've helped, I'm sure, hundreds, if not thousands, of folks in business, even if it's just from speaking. But along the way, I think I've had my hand on at least 5 businesses going to $1 million status. You know what I mean? And which says a lot. You know what I mean? Because it changes the trajectory. And so for me, it was just important. It was important to say, not only have it but share it.
Yeah.
And so I'm more impressed with the folks I've helped. And so that's why, being a business development consultant for 35, 40 years, and then saying, you know what, man, we need a building that we can just occupy and create an ecosystem. I know that's like a buzzword, but when you really understand the definition of it and the inner workings of the people within it, for me, that was important. And so, because I knew if I look back and say, okay, what are the problems that most entrepreneurs have that look like me? It's clearly the lack of access to capital, the lack of access to education, and then the fragmentation of resources. We've got this over here on the west side, this over here on the north side. You got ECDI helping. But I was like, if we had all that within the same space, because the folks up north they usually stay up north,
right?
And the folks out east stay out east, and But I said, here's a central location where you just come in this building and you're gonna get everything you need in order to not just survive but thrive. And so I just took a 40,000 square foot warehouse and built it out. And right now we have over 100 tenants, entrepreneurs who look like us. But it was important for me to not just have the people in there, but really alter and build their mindset, and because one of the things that we don't do very well culturally is support one another. And so I wanted to make sure the people who came in here had that same mindset of, okay, what I got to give mentally, I'm going to share, you know, and I'm going to support, and I'm going to root, I'm going to cheer you on, and I'm going to figure out how we can collab and just make that a normalcy, because that's what we don't normally see in our community. You know, because oftentimes you hear people when they have a bad experience with a black entrepreneurship or a black businesses, that's why I don't support black businesses. And the problem is it's usually us to say that. Yeah. You know, white folks aren't running around here saying that. You know, we say that, you know, right? Because we show us the smallest amount of grace possible and mercy. So for me, it's just like, hey, listen, you know, if you have an alt or an issue with somebody in the building, if you don't want to address them, let me know, and I'll sit down and we can, you know, I'll mediate. You know, and let's figure it out, because we got to get along. We're not perfect, but, you know, we can make it. And it's been a great thing. So the people at Co-Ed is what makes it great, man, just to see the collaborations. Because if you got one business making $10,000 getting contracts, and I said, man, if y'all collab, man, y'all can get a $100,000 contract, because there's greatness in numbers. Yes. And they start doing that, and they start saying, wow, okay, so I'm only getting 50%, but I'm getting 50% of a $100,000 contract. Exactly. Versus 100% of a 10,000. Like, let's do the math. It don't take much. Exactly. But we got to trust one another, because I think we've been taught to distrust each other. Yep. You know, and it's by design. Yep. And it's not innate, but it is definitely a learned behavior. Like, you know, so we'll be walking down the street and see white folks over here, black folks over here, and we'll walk with the white folks, so we don't trust we might get jumped by our own. Right. And it's like, come on, man. So sometimes I just tell people, man, listen, sometimes just say hi. You know, just say hi to people who look like you, man. Just break that ice, because we're not that hard. Everybody is not your enemy that looks like you. You know what I mean? Yeah. So,
and I think you're changing the culture with Co-Ed and the Blue Note, and even the development projects, because you're bringing us opportunities that we can eat and fellowship, you know, the private club and things like that that's coming. And I think that mindset is so important. And I think really for me, now that, you know, people understand to some degree, right, the scalability of 100 black businesses in a building that's 60,000 square feet. Is that what it is?
40.
Okay. So it's an amazing feat that I was just saying yesterday, because I was in there. I was like, we need one of these in every major city. You know? Right. But when you come across leadership and all these different, you know, boards and opportunities, zones that you're taking advantage of, like, what would you say are keys to success, right? You said you have a formula for entrepreneurs. So if you were sharing with this audience of people that are budding entrepreneurs, existing entrepreneurs, and specifically our people, like, what would you say keys to success?
Man, listen, one thing I teach my sons, and you can ask them when I'm not around, I say, what is the most important thing in business? They'll say relationships. You know, and sometimes that's the most important thing in life. Yeah. You know, heck, even getting to heaven is based upon a relationship. Right. You know, and so, but I would say relationship with folks. Yeah. It really is about how you treat them. But then you have to have a relationship with yourself, and that's how you treat you. You know what I mean? And one day, this really hit me like last week, because I've always talked about relationships, and I said, man, no one ever thinks about the relationship they have with self. You know, and that's just how you act. You know, that's big. You know what I mean? Like, for me, you know, I say people are always watching, right? And so if I just treat me right, they gonna watch, like, okay, because I get people coming in the Blue Note all the time, and they like, bro, let me buy him a drink, and I'm like, oh, I don't drink. They like, what? all right, let's go out and smoke a cigar on your patio. I'm like, man, I don't smoke. Right. And not to anything's wrong with that. The overconsumption is where it becomes an issue. But, you know, I mean, if I thought something was wrong with it, I wouldn't be serving it to my community. Right. And, but I always try to be a model. You know what I mean? When folks say, man, look, I can run an establishment and protect the brand. You know what I mean? Because I am the brand. Right. So if I'm in there and I get tipsy and then I'm doing things that I shouldn't be doing, you know, then shame on me. You know, and I think it was important for me, even before I opened the first Blue Note, you know, I share with my wife, like, you have to be involved in this. If you're not, I'm not doing it. Because I'm not wanting you to worry about where am I late at night. Right. I don't want, you know, the folks in there, because we have a lot of young ladies who work. And I know this is an environment where a lot of owners are messing with them and making them do things they don't want to do. And so they just see, like, wow, this guy is happily married. He's got his kids, his family, he's protective, and he's successful. And again, another stereotype that can be broken. So for me, I'm like everybody's uncle. They know I'm protective. Like, you know, hey, hey, I'm like, listen, if you guys have any problems with any patron, let me know,
Right.
and I'm just gonna have a conversation with them,
Right.
Because sometimes all it takes is them say, oh yeah, my uncle is the owner. They Pinel's your, oh okay, nah, I'm gonna fall back. Because I remember when he was in the projects.
Exactly.
But it's still, for me, it's just important to I'm protective of my people, man. And even the way other cultures look at us. So I want to start by just saying, hey, man, look, I'm going to give a business to our community that exudes Black excellence and excellence.
Yeah.
That happens to be Black.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And make us proud. And that's what I set out to do with all my businesses, man.
Yeah. I think it's, obviously it's amazing. I think one of the, something key that you said is like your relationship with yourself. And I think as Black men a lot, we're abusive, because you're taught to just continue regardless to, just do what you have to do and not necessarily think about how you feel. Right. And I think the last 10 years or so, there's been a lot of conversations with mental health and just self-evaluation to say, who am I? How am I feeling? Instead of me being robotic in my approach to just get it done.
Right.
And I think that's a very difficult thing. And to tackle that, as well as the stereotypes that you're talking about, like the things that we put on each other, and the self-talk, like that to me are things that we all have to work on, you know, especially that I've seen, in our community, specifically in business. I remember I was just giving a talk here recently in a class, and I was like, it was like my confessional. I was like, hey, sometimes it's hard for me to talk about my success. But that was real.
Right.
Because I look at it like work. Same thing that you did when you sat down. You're like, you know what? I guess I am doing something. Like, yeah, bro, you just built out the whole Main Street. You got 3 restaurants and multiple buildings and still going. And you have something to say. And I think that it's cool that people kind of know, but it's important for people to have value to say something's happened at co-ed. It's important that you, support the Blue Note. It's multiple coming, but we still have to show up and do our part as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree, man. And shout out to you, because I've watched you, man, and you connect folks, and that's a skill, because I think that the greatest attribute that a connector can have is to be trustworthy. You know what I mean? Because people just say, hey, if Gary's introduced me to this person, right, they must be solid.
Right.
Because a lot of us won't approach people that we don't know, because we don't know their background. We don't know how solid they may or may not be.
Right.
But you go in, you vet folks, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to connect this person with this person. And that's a skill.
Right.
Because that's necessary in our community, because but for is a legal term, right? And but for you meeting these folks. So It's almost like you're going out into the field and say, okay, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to take the whipping of learning people, and then saying, nope, they're whack. You know what I mean? Nope, they're solid. Because most of us would just be like, I'm just going to stay in my bubble and do me. But you go out there and you be like, you know what? I know this person and this person. I can connect them. And that's critical, because if it wasn't for you, a lot of connections we made. And like you said, we just came from, looking at a real estate deal.
Right.
That wouldn't have been,
right,
had it not been for you saying, Derek, meet Mike, meet Derek, you know what I mean? So, and you do that often, man. So kudos to you and what you're doing, bro.
Yeah, thank you. That's probably something most people don't know. But it's one of those things that I enjoy. And that's why I think seeing what you're doing has always intrigued me to say, like, man, on this level where you're cultivating all these businesses and giving them opportunity and spaces to do things. But everybody needs it, right? Because you're building something and you still need, people to help you continue to build what you're doing. And so that mic conversation, obviously, one of my friends that runs Life and has a great establishment. I just felt like you guys having that conversation would be amazing. And just like this one, it's like we need more platforms to have conversations to understand what is the mindset behind success.
Right.
So your relationship with yourself, your relationship with others, you throw in there your relationship with God, right?
Absolutely. Yep. First and foremost, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Your relationship.
That will correct anything that may go off course.
Right.
You know what I mean? If your relationship with people go off course, if you have a relationship with God, you're going to be conflicted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And convicted.
Right.
So then you're going to self-correct, like, okay, let me, I didn't talk to that person the right way. Let me go back and humble myself and ask for forgiveness and keep it moving. That helps relationship. Or you do things to yourself that aren't healthy.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so then you got to go back and ask self for forgiveness. Like, okay, I'm going to stop over-consuming, or I'm going to stop, overeating.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so for me, all that plays a part. So yeah, man, that's first and foremost, man. Because if it wasn't for the man upstairs, bro, I'd be nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
I heard you say something in a meeting that you probably forgot, but we were talking, and it was in conversation at co-ed, and we were talking about leadership, and something that you said has stuck with me. And we were talking about leadership, and people have a lot to say, but she was like, one thing that you can learn in being a leader is just being quiet. I was like, man, he got something to say. So because you were talking about how you can evaluate a room.
Yeah.
And there's a guy, Bob Hope Johnson. He said, you learn more by listening, you get more by giving. And so I would love for you to elaborate on that point, to talk about what you meant by leadership and listening.
Yeah, I think that we live in an age where so many people talk. So many people feel they want to be heard, right? And so I feel like you hear people say lead by example, right? And so it doesn't say lead by talking.
Right.
Because I always tell folks, you can listen to somebody. That don't necessarily mean they're right.
Right.
But you can watch them. And their actions are very much believable. They're going to believe way more what they see you do than what you say. And so for me, I used to say, man, listen, I mean, because I can get out there and tell people, oh, yeah, man, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this. And they're like, I hear it, but they're going to watch me. And so sometimes if you want to be in the best position to be watched, you just got to be quiet, because sometimes you mess up. You mess up people's perception of you by opening up your mouth.
True.
And that makes it sometimes difficult to lead, because there's been times I've said the wrong thing. It may not have been untrue. It was just maybe my timing was off, so I just said, I'm just going to be quiet. And sometimes being quiet speaks volumes, because I'm big on humility. Like I'm on my 11th book, and it's called Be Great, Stay Humble. Right. And, when you talk about the 10,000 hour rule and all the other things that kind of make us experts at what we do, that's the being great part, right? But along with that greatness requires a level of humility, because that means you can always do better. You just think to yourself, man, listen, I can always improve. And so for me, sometimes just listening and learning helps me get better. And if you want to be a better leader, sometimes I would say you got to listen to the people that are following you. But again, that requires silence sometimes, because if I'm always, hey, this we're gonna do, this we're gonna do, this we're gonna do, I never get to hear what the people saying, but this is what we want, this is what we need, so then you say, okay, let me just be quiet, hear what they want. Now I know how to lead. And guess what, that didn't require me to say anything. Listen, lead. So that's just important to me, man. I know folks is watching, man.
So you've written 11 books?
I have, man.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to go through
We'll spend some time on that another day. But and most of them are about entrepreneurship and wealth building and management techniques, things that who I am.
Yeah,
it's easy. When you just start writing about who you are, it then it just becomes, find me an editor to make it look pretty.
Right.
But at the end of the day, man, when you tell somebody, just tell me about you.
Yeah.
And what what you learned over the years, and so just like I used to say, I was a youth minister, right? And
really,
so, yeah, and but the older you get, the broader youth become, because when I was in my 20s, it was everybody was a teenager and younger,
right?
Now you're in your 50s, it's everybody 40 and younger as a youth, so the youth are getting older too. When I see students that I taught at Champion, coming to the Blue Note, in their 40s, I'm like, I taught you in the 7th grade? Okay. You're still youth to me.
Wow.
So
wow, I just learned two interesting things already. So you were a youth minister. So, would you feel like the community and what you're doing is kind of like obviously you said you felt called to entrepreneurship versus just the pulpit, right? Not to say you couldn't do it, because obviously you're a great communicator. You could do that, but what made you decide? And I'm asking this in a critical position because I was a youth pastor.
Okay.
Before I started doing clothing, pastored a youth church in the west side of Columbus, grew it. But there was some things that were happening within the church that I just wasn't the most happy with, like this the political side of it.
Right.
So I decided to go do some work like Huckleberry House and do some community stuff and do some other things.
Yep.
So I was wondering what led you to the entrepreneurship?
So So my life is like a dichotomy. It's like
Right.
two. So it's there's the entrepreneurial piece,
Right.
which I was created to be, but then
Mm-hmm.
it was the minister piece, which I was called to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, so when you look at it, even from a fivefold standpoint, right? I'm a teacher.
Mm.
So whether it was teaching in the church walls or teaching entrepreneurship, like that's my calling, is to be a teacher. So I know I always tell people your gifts, which you're good at, and your calling are usually closely related. You know, God's not gonna say I won't make you make you a people person, but your job is to go work on computers in a room by yourself.
Exactly.
Like, nah, that don't really fit.
Right,
you know
right.
what I mean? So I knew, I get along with people, I can talk to people, and so I knew I was gonna be working with people. But so even I tell folks, even in all the businesses that I do, it's a ministry, and that's your walking the walk. You know what I mean? Because people are always watching. They're watching me when I'm at the Blue. They're watching me at Co-Ed. They're watching me do real estate deals. Because if there's something unethical getting ready to go down on a real estate deal, it doesn't, even if it's worth millions. I'm like, I'm gonna walk. I'm gonna walk. But I've not that it had to be a scam.
Yeah.
But there's been, there was I was getting ready to purchase a building outright, and somebody told me, hey man, there's another brother who was interested in this building, right? So I called him to my office and said, what are you thinking about doing with it? He told me, fashion piece or whatnot. So I said, I'm gonna fall back. I'm not gonna get it so you can get it. See, to me, that was a ministry.
Yeah.
Because I was able to show him, like, bro, we ain't gotta compete.
Exactly.
Can I go buy cash this building? Yeah, I can. But let me fall back so you can get it, so you can grow, you can scale, you could take care of your family, you can make an impact on the community. You know what I mean? And so I'm always in a minister role, because it's just, how do you interact with people, that's the ministry side. So I remember even going to the pastor saying, like, man, listen, I mean, I appreciate this opportunity, but I'm looking at the same 200 youth every Sunday, and there's millions of youth out here in this world that need to be touched, that need to be loved, that need to know, what love feels like, and so, I'm taking my talents to South Beach. So, okay. That was, those who know, but, that was just important for me to just spread out and just have more breadth, more depth, and just say more of an impact.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't have to be, open your Bible. What I mean? It's just open your heart.
I could always feel that. And that was one thing that I could always felt when I was around, is that, again, I mean, I've traveled and met a lot of people, right? And so, but it was always something. When I went to Co-Ed or I came to Blue, and then I would see, okay, now you decorated the whole thing. You did it. It wasn't your wife. You didn't get a staff to do it. So you did this whole mansion, every room, every detail. And it was like, oh, so I could feel something a little bit more majestic and something that was spiritual happening, why I think the community is naturally drawn to it, right? Because you don't even promote yourself, right? So even getting you here, it's gonna be people seeing you for the first time, like, oh, I seen that dude. He might have let me in the building.
Right. He was vacuuming when I went in there.
Didn't know it was your building.
Let me find Gary. Gary got the custodian on the show, man. Like, that's dope, man. Gary reaching out, connecting everybody.
Exactly.
No disrespect to custodians.
No, it's cool.
I got some of the greatest cleaning staff, man, because they minister to folks. You know what I mean? Just by doing their job well.
Right. But I think it's a powerful thing, that it's something that's needed in our community. And that's why I say I admire it, because you have a bunch of people that get up, and no disrespect to people that get in pulpits and, are pushing our walk with, with Absolutely. The Lord. But there also need to be people that are not just building churches, but building business and community in ways that we can impact, whether it's youth programs or nonprofits or clothing businesses, because it all touches people, right?
Yeah.
And so even for me here today, it all started with, clothing to some degree. And that clothing, my gift made room. And so now I'm doing multiple things. So I just admire what you're doing and wanted to have you on to just share your voice so that people can put a face with the names, like, oh yeah, I heard of that. Oh, Co-Ed, I heard of that. Pernell, I heard it. Yeah, Brother Pernell, Elder Pernell, So hopefully people can start to contextualize and hopefully continue to help you build, because there's a lot that we're building. I look at me as part of the team at this point, right?
Absolutely. You are. You're an integral part of the team, brother. Yeah.
But I just appreciate you sharing, because that could be a vulnerable thing as well, to talk about, who you are, what you're doing. And to sit still for a few minutes, because I know that phone is ringing. Look, your assistant in the room. We got some other things I'm sure you got to do. Another meeting you got to be at as well.
Yeah, but I appreciate this, man. Yep. This was good for me.
Yeah, man. But thank you, man. And one more thing, just before we close out, is there anything else that you would love to share about what you're doing from a Blue Note perspective, Co-Ed perspective, or just a message that you would send out, to our community?
Yeah. Well, I would say right now, other than just real estate development, right? I do have plans to develop like a 2-mile stretch of Main Street. And it's a major development. It's going to require a lot of folks, a lot of support. But the goal is to create this strip called the Renaissance District. And the goal is that it's predominantly Black owned from a real estate standpoint. There's a lot of communities, that have Black names, and Black businesses, but they're not Black owned. And so, and it's more than just having Black owned businesses. You know what I mean? We got to have some Black owned real estate because that's what lasts. I always say the people who own the real estate control the situation, because you can have a business that's doing very well and the building owner can say, hey, we're going to go in a different direction. I've seen it.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. Plus I saw a stat that said by 2035, the average asset of the Black family will be zero. Which means, grandma and grandpa passing away, we sell a house, we pocket the money, because most of us have never had 20, 30 grand in our accounts, but we killing ourselves, from a futuristic standpoint. And so for me, I just wanted at least a strip to be known and show that greatness and that history, because we have folks and administration that would love to whitewash and get rid of our history. And, so I think it's important for us to put things in place to ensure that can't happen. And so we'll have buildings named after folks that are contributing, that have contributed in the past and are currently contributing. And that's a mainstay, you know what I mean? So when they're gone, that's that generational wealth. That's that legacy that we need to leave. So that's important to me. So I'm working on that on East Main Street. I think it's going to be a model that other cities will say, hey, listen, we got to figure out how to do this, because the legacies have to live on.
Yep.
So that's what I'm working on right now, man.
Yeah, and that's a major feat. It's nothing light, but I would just say this: congratulations on all you're doing. Happy to be a part of the team.
hey, happy to have you, brother.
And looking forward to the opening of everything that's to come, man. But I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
My guy.
Yep.